in 1996, I got very sick. I thought it was some kind of flu that was going around at the time. And I was out of work for almost a month. I had several close friends who were HIV positive, and they were like, you need to go get tested. And I ignored them. I was like, no, I'm fine. Look, like, I'm good. Literally a year to the date, so 1997, I get sick again. And I remember just being on my sofa, like in fetal position, balled up. And I was just like, I got it. One of my friends was like, I'm taking you to get tested. And so this is at the time where the tests were not rapid. I had to come back. I think it was on a Friday. I had to come back on like a Tuesday. And it was like the longest weekend of my life. And I remember the doctor came out and told me that I was HIV positive. And I just sunk. I was disappointed in myself. I was scared. Um, I, at that point, was a public figure. So I was like, I don't know what that means for work, for, I'm on television, all these things. And it was really, really tough. Vibe magazine was the, number one magazine for hip hop and urban culture. And when I became editor in chief of the magazine, which was a big first because I was the first black, gay, openly gay man to become an editor in chief of a national magazine that was centering black culture, black music, hip hop, a very misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic culture, I realized that I had an opportunity to use my voice and to educate not just the LGBTQ plus community, but to also enlighten and educate the Black community and beyond about what was happening in our community. From the early 90s to the early 2000s, there was this shift. So within hip hop and the Black community, there was this DL culture that developed. And the down low culture was really men who were having sex with men, but they may be having sex with women, but more importantly, they were living in the closet. They didn't feel comfortable or safe coming out in their neighborhoods, especially if they were from the hood or low income neighborhoods. It wasn't safe for them to be out. There was also a huge community of black gay men who were middle class and kind of hiding in the shadows because at work, at their corporate jobs or their working class jobs, again, it wasn't safe to be out. And so we started covering those stories in the magazine. I took a lot of heat for having that coverage in the magazine because people didn't want to see it. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to know about it. And so I felt a little hypocritical about it because I was even afraid to come out about my status. Native Son is a movement, a community, and a platform. We basically say that it's inspiration and empowerment for Black gay men. So when I started Native Son, I realized I had an opportunity to tell my truth and to live my truth. And at the very first Native Son dinner that we did, it was about 50 Black intergenerational men who were queer or gay. I was less freaked out about saying it to this group of men and really freaked out because I hadn't told my mother. And my fear was that it would get picked up in the press that I'd made this announcement. So it was super duper stressful. Several people came up to me at the dinner and they were like, thank you for sharing your truth. I'm positive and I've never told anybody. My family doesn't know. I'm terrified. And I remember the next day, it was a beautiful fall day and it was sunny, and I was walking down the street and it was literally like everything was in Technicolor. I could feel my feet hitting the pavement. The sun was brilliant, the colors, the trees, everything. It was just like I was free. My mother traditionally baked pumpkin bread for our family for the holidays and for friends and community and shelters. So I went home that weekend under the guise of being her sous chef and learning the family tradition. Also, her health was really bad, and we didn't know how much longer she had to live. And we're having this really great experience. So we do it the first day. Don't tell her. Just like, I can't do it. We were baking again the second day. And I was like, so literally, we are baking the last batch of the bread. I'm literally like crying, and tears are dropping into the batter. And I was like, Mom, I have something to tell you. And I said, I'm HIV positive. Crickets. And she said, okay. And I said, well, let me explain some things to you first. So I've been on meds for the last 5 years. I'm what is considered undetectable, which means it's almost impossible for me to infect anyone with the virus. And I go to the doctor quarterly. I get blood work done twice a year. I get annual checkups. And she's like, okay, quiet. And I'm like bawling. I'm just like still stirring and blending. And she said, what took you so long to tell me? And I said, I was ashamed. And she was quiet. My mother's not a quiet woman. And she said, when you told me you were gay, I was always afraid you would get that. And that was my biggest fear. And she's like, can you give me a minute? So we were listening to gospel music as we were cooking. And so I kind of turned the music up a little. And I left her for about half an hour. So I came back to check on her. And she just hugged me. And she just kept hugging me and rocking with me. You know, the rest of the weekend, my mother she loved on me like she had not loved on me for a very long time. And it was just a very powerful moment, but it was a moment of releasing the shame and stigma that I was carrying, that I almost inflicted for 15 years on myself and on her. And one of the things that I always encourage people who are afraid to come out about being gay or queer or gender nonconforming or who are living with HIV is live your truth and give the people in your life, your family, your friends, the opportunity to love you. I talk a lot about living at the intersection of our blackness and our gayness or queerness. So, you know, we're already facing issues of police brutality, higher rates of incarceration, issues around housing insecurities and unemployment and all those things. It's a lot. And if you're trying to survive and thrive in a world where you're already marginalized, it's just another stressor. And so I think sometimes people just give up, like, how much can you handle? So am I in a moment of I'm drinking and I'm out with my friends and I hook up with a guy and I'm going to go have sex? Is putting on a condom or asking him his HIV status at the top of my mind? Probably not. And in some ways, it may be that you are aware that you're about to have risky sex and you don't care because you don't matter in this world. So does it matter if I'm going to get HIV? Does it matter if I'm already living in these very oppressive situations? No. And I want to be clear that this is not pathology. This is not just people who are living below the poverty line. These are things that very middle class, working class folks are also dealing with. The thing that keeps me up at night is really the fact that, according to the CDC, the Black community at large is still living with HIV at very high numbers. Black women, trans women, and it is just something that isn't talked about. I think the biggest concern for me is that the numbers are rising in both directions. So with Black LGBTQ elders, and then as well as our Gen Z and millennials, the numbers keep going up, and that to me is terrifying. It's almost like, especially with younger generations, like they expect to get HIV. It's almost like getting hypertension or diabetes. And that scares me.